Maple Leafs fans around the world have wanted their team to win the Stanley Cup for a long time, but not like this. No, not like this. Still, we're going to ignore the teachings of Guru Pitka's book, Does It Hurt When You Do That? Don't do that. Serve up some Quebec pizza and watch some elephant porn to prove to you that the Love Guru, it's not that bad. Welcome to It's Not That Bad, the podcast that looks for A grades in B movies, or as this episode is so succinctly going to be subtitled, Things We Do to Ourselves That We Regret Afterwards, because we are talking about 2008's The Love Guru. We knew this day would come. This movie had to have its own episode, and I'm regretting the fact that it's on the show. But I am not regretting the fact that on the show today to talk about this steaming pile of crap that's called a movie is good friend Simon Bennett from 680 News and the Sportsnet 590 The Fan. Simon, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing better now that I'm finished watching that movie again. Because that was,
Yeah.
It had its moments, let me tell you.
We are going to have PTSD on this one. Okay, so before we get into like the whole deets, I have to ask you, when we were talking about picking a movie for a show for you to come on, and we decided on The Love Guru, why the hell did you say yes to The Love Guru?
Well, there are a few reasons. It involves the Maple Leafs winning the Stanley Cup, which is, as we all know, pure fiction, but it's better than the Ottawa Senators winning the Stanley Cup or actually doing anything in the playoffs. So there's that. But we also talked, well, I had to get that in there. But we also talked off air about the fact that my wife and I were at some of the shooting for this movie, because most of the hockey stuff is shot at what is now called Scotiabank Arena in downtown Toronto, home of the Maple Leafs, was then Air Canada Centre. And they shot some of the hockey scenes during the intermission of a preseason game. So we happened to be there. I don't think we even knew they were doing this. Just randomly halfway through the first period, please stay here in your seats for the extended intermission where we will be shooting scenes from Mike Myers' new movie. Yay! Nothing about what it was about. We didn't know anything about Pitka or the Love Guru himself or weird names or anything. Just that it was a movie about the Leafs. Yeah. Just that it was a movie about the Leafs by Mike Myers. And, you know, up until Love Guru, I think we both held Mike Myers in high regard. Obviously, Shrek, Austin Powers, Wayne's World.
Mm-hmm.
And I had high hopes for this movie, I'll be honest. Now, the scenes we were at, and we weren't at all the hockey scenes. The ones that come to mind, I think there's an early sort of breakout goal that Darren Roanoke scores. I think they shot that in the first intermission. And then the second intermission, they shot them winning the cup. And Andy Frost, who was the PA announcer for the Maple Leafs at the time, pipes up, all right, so this is the scene where the Leafs win the Stanley Cup. So cheer like they won the Stanley Cup. Like, oh, okay. Meanwhile, the game, they got it was preseason because the intermissions were half an hour. They doubled the intermission like that. I think they shot more after as well. But yeah, it was kind of cool to be part of that unexpectedly, but also, you know, Mike Myers, for those who know his backstory, he's a Toronto boy and a massively fan, and he doesn't hide it. Like going back to the 90s when he was big on SNL, he would talk about the Maple Leafs. He would be at All-Star games. I remember early 90s, Ron McClain was interviewing him during the actual All-Star game, and as they were talking, Dave Andreychuk scored a goal. And like, ah! Right? So, I mean, he did stuff with the early 90s Leafs. But the Leafs are part of his identity outside of the acting world, right? So, you know, so knowing Mike Myers and him being a Leaf fan and, you know, being from Toronto like we are, I had high hopes for this movie as a Leafs winning the cup type movie. But let me tell you, those hopes were really high, and they were,
It's not like that. What was that Drew Barrymore movie where like the Red Sox, went on to win the World Series, and it was around that time. And they actually I think they did like a reshoot because the Red Sox actually won the World Series that year. Like it was, I can't even remember, but you know the movie I'm talking
I've
about.
gone blank on the name. It was Jimmy Fallon, wasn't it, with Drew?
Possibly. All I know is Drew Barrymore, and somehow the Red Sox won the World Series. And
well, they changed the script.
Yeah,
because the Red Sox won. The whole thing was they were supposed to lose the thing, and then I remember when they won the World Series that year in 2004, they had the Fox broadcast cut away to Drew Barrymore and Jimmy Fallon making out in the seats, which was part of the movie, we think. So
we hope.
We hope, possibly. And it was like, what's going on here? And you could tell they were acting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like no one around them was reacting as what's Drew Barrymore doing here? Like, but that was I forget what it's.
Yeah,
I forget the name of the movie.
You know what's gonna happen?
I know exactly what you mean.
We're gonna finish recording, and it's gonna hit us, and we're gonna like call each other at like 3:00 in the morning. It's like that's the movie. Also, if that happens, dear God, don't call me at 3:00 in the morning. Okay, so before we get into
up at 3:00 in the morning, I'll have you know. So
that's why I'm saying don't call me. But before we get into talking about the Love Guru, I'm gonna hand the microphone over to you because it's time to take the Love Guru and trailerize it.
In a world where the Maple Leafs can win the Stanley Cup, Darren Roanoke has lost his girlfriend and his mojo. Enter Guru Pitka, entrusted to get him back on track and help bring the Leafs to the promised land. Mike Myers is the Love Guru.
I love the fact that your trailerized basically comes in as in a world where the Leafs could win the Stanley Cup because it's been a bit.
Listen, they're good. It's happening. They're getting past the first round at least this year.
It's funny you mentioned that. Okay, so little background on this film here, released in 2008, which is still more recent than the last time the Leafs have won a playoff round, which the last time they did that was 2004
against the Ottawa Senators.
Hey, but the Sens have at least made a Stanley Cup final since then. I will have you remember.
Shut up, okay?
Okay, so the movie stars. There's going to be a lot of this. A lot of Toronto, Ottawa back and forth on this one, and maybe we'll revisit this movie at the end of the season. If the Ottawa Senators win the Stanley Cup, you have to watch this movie again. I think that should be the punishment. Okay.
That'd be better than the jersey bet you make me do at work when we were at the Score and you made me wear a Sens jersey for the day.
For the record, I will put that picture up on Twitter.
Don't you dare.
Okay, so the movie stars Mike Myers, Jessica Alba, Vern Troyer, Romani Malco as Darren Roanoke, John Oliver, and Justin Timberlake as the aptly named Jacques Lecoq. Now, it's a good cast. When you take a look at who's on there before you actually watch the movie, it's actually not a bad cast.
It's an incredible cast. Like Thelma Hopkins is the mom. If you mentioned Jessica Alba, Vern Troyer, Mini-Me. Ben Kingsley is in this movie.
Okay, we
cross-eyed the whole time.
We have to remind people that Ben Kingsley played Gandhi. He won an Oscar for playing Gandhi, and then he went to this movie to play Guru Tugamaputa.
You say it again?
Guru Tugamaputa.
They had Jim Gaffigan and Stephen Colbert as the Hockey Night in Canada crew, and some random cameos. We can talk about those now or later if you want.
But, we'll get to those in a bit.
There's some interesting cameos as well. One that you really have to look hard to see, and I didn't see it until after I went online to see them all. Like,
really?
Her? Yeah.
Okay.
So now we'll get to that.
Now, the movie was directed by Marco Schnabel. Now, movie fans, if you're a little bit lost when I say the name Marco Schnabel because you're like, well, that's a new name to me, that's because The Love Guru is the one and only lead director credit on his IMDb. This is the only time that he was ever the director on a movie. I don't know whether that's good or bad, but he was a second unit director on Meet the Parents, Meet the Fockers, and Austin Powers and Goldmember. So you can see, at least with Goldmember, there is a bit of a history with Marco Schnabel and Mike Myers. Now, he was also a producer on some of the Austin Powers movies as well. So there is, there's at least a relationship between Schnabel and Mike Myers, which, you can see why they handed him the director's chair. But
one of the things when you look at the reviews for this movie is that they clearly didn't have anyone to rein in Mike Myers, and they probably could have used that to make this movie better. So, but yeah, if you look, like, clearly there's a relationship there. I think if you look at the credits for all the Austin Powers movies, his name is on there along with Mike Myers.
Mm-hmm.
He's got some great, more recent writing credits. He's worked on NCIS, Librarians, Mr. Peabody and Sherman. So, like, he's got a pretty good career, but yes, this one directing role for which he was nominated for a Razzie as worst director was this movie.
Yeah, if he's on NCIS Director Victims Unit, then that makes sense. Now, it was actually written by Mike Myers and Graham Gordy, and I wonder, by the way, Graham Gordy, there's a scene where I guess there's a party going on and there's a DJ at the scene. That's Graham Gordy. The DJ is the co-writer. But you know, as a first-time lead director for Marco Schnabel, you know, and let's be honest, like, as The Love Guru is being filmed, this is also like peak Mike Myers power here, as far as Austin Powers is a ratings and box office juggernaut. You know, we're coming off of Wayne's World. How do you, as a first-time director, say, no, you know, Mike, you might want to turn it down a bit?
It's pretty clear that Mike Myers runs the show here.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just interesting that that's his one director credit. I wonder if he had directorial aspirations and this movie kind of ended them. Only he knows, right?
Exactly. Now, as far as the critical acclaim for this movie, critical acclaim, it won at the Razzies that year for Worst Picture, Mike Myers for Worst Actor, and Worst Screenplay. It was also nominated for Worst Actress for Jessica Alba, but she got beat out, quote unquote beat out, by Paris Hilton, who won for the movie The Hottie and the Naughty.
What?
Yeah.
I don't recall this movie.
No one should ever recall The Hottie and the Naughty.
Paris Hilton.
Exactly. I'm sure somewhere down the road we'll be talking The Hottie and the Naughty somewhere. Vern Troyer and Ben Kingsley were both nominated for Worst Supporting Actor. Winner that year was Pierce Brosnan for Mamma Mia. Now, here's the thing about Ben Kingsley, you know, freaking Gandhi. He had 3 movies that year that were nominated for Worst Supporting Actor because of him. There was this. There was War Inc., which also starred John Cusack and Hilary Duff, and The Whackness, which also starred Mary-Kate Olsen, and those 3. He was in all 3 of those movies that year they were released, and he was nominated for 3 times for Best Supporting Actor, Worst Supporting Actor. But that same year, because Ben Kingsley is a busy guy, he was nominated for British Actor of the Year by the London Film Critics Circle for Elegy. So it's not like Ben Kingsley's a bad actor. He was just dealing with a bad script.
No script filters for Ben Kingsley that year.
No glass filters either, because as well the cross-eyedness. Maybe that was it. He looked at the script cross-eyed, and they're like, okay, now you're in. At the box office, okay, it was a $62 million budget and made $40 million gross worldwide. So yeah, it's a money loser. You can't really deny that. But to put it into perspective, okay, so this movie was released June 20th, 2008. It debuted at number 4 with 5.3 million at the box office. It was released the same week as Get Smart with Steve Carell and Anne Hathaway and The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. That debuted at 13 million. So, like, the fact that you had 2 very clear comedic films coming out on the same weekend, it's one of those things where if an action movie comes out and a comedy movie comes out, you can at least sit there and say, well, we were the highest grossing comedy debut that week. But they couldn't even say that because Get Smart took the number 1 spot. So as far as box office goes, is this one of those things where it just came out with a much more familiar property and, well, arguably a better film because Get Smart was a lot of fun? Or is it people just saw the promos and went, oh, dear God, why?
Well, I mean, there's 2 thoughts there. It made only just under $14 million in the opening weekend. And like you say, it lost money in the end.
Mm-hmm.
funny thing is, Get Smart didn't do well with critics either. Did it not? Like, I feel like people kind of panned that in the end too, if I remember correctly. But if you look at fourth in the box office that week, Get Smart, Incredible Hulk, and Kung Fu Panda. If you look at those, no chance.
Yeah, no. I mean, Incredible Hulk, it was actually in its 8th week at that time, right? Kung Fu Panda had been in for a while. And of course, kids' films do have a bit of a longer shelf life because kids always want to get to see it. Now, you said Get Smart was kind of roasted by critics. According to Rotten Tomatoes, Get Smart is sitting at a 51% tomato meter and a 67% audience score. So it's kind of halfway. It's
mediocre.
Yeah. To get my French on, because my son is learning French, comme si, comme ça. When it comes to The Love Guru, however, a 14% tomato meter and a 33% audience score. So we have talked already about how painful this movie can be. So I'm going to put it in your hands before we do the breakdown here. 14%. Is it right? Or is it too cruel? Or is it too gracious of a rating?
It might be. I would say it's about right. I will tell you, I laughed at one thing. Now, I'd seen it. I also say Timberlake saves this movie from being totally unfunny because he's actually quite good. Now, did you see some of the Rotten Tomatoes compiled reviews? Some of them are really funny. I've got a couple here. Larushka Ivanzadeh from the Metro newspaper in the UK. You'll wish the once talented Myers had merely rested on his laurels rather than pooping into them. Mike Edwards of What Culture. Do you remember Mike Myers? Well, I suggest that you hold on to that memory and lock it tight inside you because the Love Guru wants to destroy it. Pete Hammond, Hollywood.com, and this is to a point I went to with the director. It appears Myers did not have someone behind the camera reining him in. Too bad. There's some funny reviews there. Well, I would say 14% is accurate, though.
Let's get to the acting because you mentioned Justin Timberlake right away. You know what's funny? Like, I will admit, I'm a diehard metalhead. I love my hard music, and I'm not a fan of Timberlake's albums. But when it comes to his acting or the way he is kind of away from the mic when he's not doing his music, it is almost impossible to hate this guy. And him being in this movie, he just kind of took like that almost like pop superstar persona, tucked it away and just let himself have fun. Like his whole Celine Dion impersonation. He's literally the funniest Canadian, and he's not Canadian in this film. You can't not sit there and just laugh at every scene he's in, especially considering the fact that it's Justin freaking Timberlake.
Well, this is early in his acting career too, so he's still figuring it out. I think the one thing that I've always liked about Justin Timberlake, and this goes back, and I'll tell you a story in a second, he gets it. He kind of knows his place, I think, right? The example I can lead to is a few years prior to this, the SARS concert. For those in Toronto who remember, tourism was way down because of SARS and how badly it affected the city of Toronto. So they had a massive concert at Downsview Park. 500,000 people went. I was one of them. And they had an incredible bill. They had Rush. They had the Guess Who. They had, and the top, they had the Flaming Lips. And the top two performers were AC/DC and the Rolling Stones. Like, if you look at that concert, that's like epic. And AC/DC played pretty much an hour-long set, and the Rolling Stones played an hour-long set. It's not like they showed up and played 2 or 3 songs. And somewhere in the middle of all that, Timberlake was there. And he did about a 15-minute set, and he was roasted by the people there, and they were throwing bottles at him. And then they do press conferences after, and he understood. He was like, listen, I look at that bill, I would have booed me too. And then what was actually quite cool is he came out and did a song with the Stones near the end of the night. And I was like, okay, this is cool. But he's always been a kind of person that understands what he means, and he gets it.
That was actually
like a genuinely good dude. You know what I mean?
That was actually the moment, and I'm glad you brought that one up. That was actually the moment where I sat there and said, I can't hate this guy. I can dislike his music. I have no problem disliking his music, even though every now and then you get like a song stuck in your head and like, why is that there? Why, dear God, get it out? Because it's catchy. but you really can't dislike him because you're right. He does get it. He doesn't take himself seriously, and he likes to have fun, right?
Yeah.
And this was the perfect role for him to have fun in because it was just so over the top. And we were calling him Jacques Lecoq. Complete random trivia here. There is a real person named Jacques Lecoq. There is. He is, according to IMDb, he is known as the father of modern mime, and he actually worked on the 1961 film, and I'm going to butcher my French here, but bear with me here, Tintin et les mystères de la Toison d'Or. Yeah,
that's a good attempt.
He worked on a French Tintin movie, Jacques Lecoq.
French Tintin movie sounds very dirty.
It does. It does. But no more dirty than Jacques Lecoq. But
also in a movie that was way too full of penis jokes, his penis jokes were the only ones that were funny.
Yes, very, very true. Although that being said, all the roosters all over the place, full credit for going full Lecoq.
Yes.
The full Lecoq. Stephen Colbert. Stephen Colbert as the play-by-play guy in this. The best laughs that I had during this film were when he was doing play-by-play. I want one day, and I don't even care if I have to wait till the 20th anniversary of this movie. So in 2028, if Hockey Night in Canada wants to bring back Jim Gaffigan and Stephen Colbert to do play-by-play for one game, I am here for it. It needs to happen.
It's quite something because I would love to know if he just ad-libbed a bunch of lines and he picked the best ones, or if that was all Myers. Like
it's hard to say.
Knows? He goes off the rails immensely.
I wouldn't be surprised
it's
if
also,
there's a bunch of outtakes there.
Yeah, it's also a bit of a sports cliche where they bring on, you bring on actual play-by-play announcers that we know, and one of them just says inappropriate things because it's, oh my God, Al Michaels said that. Although the best play-by-play pairing in a sports movie is Dodgeball because Jason Bateman is fantastic.
Which was released in 2004. So this actually came out 4 years after that film. And then carrying on that tradition, you had Hank Azaria as Brockmire, and that show was freaking hilarious. You have Graham Norton. That's not sports, but you have Graham Norton as your commentator in Eurovision, the story of Fire Saga, available on Netflix.
I haven't seen that yet.
It's strangely fun. I will admit.
You don't understand. I'm a European. You don't understand. The Eurovision is such a massive deal in Europe. Like, it's legitimately. And some of the songs are so awful. Like, there's a reason ABBA won the thing, and they fit right in. But you really have to live in Europe or have lived in Europe to understand how big a deal Eurovision is. It's quite something. Graham Norton, big fan, by the way.
I still think the funniest part of Eurovision for me was they're playing their gig and they're like, "Oh, who wants to hear our Eurovision song?" And you got some guy in the crowd like, play Ja Ja Ding Dong. And I'm just like, as a person in a cover band, some dude in Iceland jumping up and saying, "Play Ya Ya Ding Dong." That's literally someone and Eddie show getting up and going, "Free bird!" Like,
you guys should learn Ya Ya Ding Dong.
Oh, Ya Ya Ding Dong. You
do it.
Yeah. Right now, people who are listening to this show thinking two things: A, don't ever sing again. B, I'll now have to get that song out of my head. So go listen to that. And John Michael Higgins and Elizabeth Banks, who were the commentators in Pitch Perfect. Like, you're right. There is a tradition of play-by-play commentators getting some of the best lines in a film, and Stephen Colbert and Jim Gaffigan, I think, fit the bill perfectly for this.
Yeah. Also, if you want to go way back, Bob Uecker in Major League.
Oh yes, I completely forgot about that.
That's one of the best.
Speaking of Stephen Colbert, his one-time Daily Show compatriot John Oliver as Dick Pants. They didn't really have to do much with John Oliver. They just kind of put him in this role saying, okay, so you're Guru Pitka's agent, just be John Oliver with a bad haircut. Which, by the way, John Oliver, you have been doing much better with your hair as of late. I know you make fun of it constantly. 2008, not so good.
This is also before John Oliver got pretty big in North America too, right? Like, you know, I don't think I think he may have been on Daily Show at this point, or maybe not yet.
I think he was a correspondent for the Daily Show. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This is before he got big.
Mm-hmm. But you can see, like, he's one of the few actors that didn't kind of feel out of place in this film. The role was actually, I think, tailor-made for him, and that he was definitely a good part of it.
Yeah, he didn't have a lot to do, but the role he played, he played it perfectly. He played it very well.
Mm-hmm. Surprisingly,
and
also
Vern Troyer.
Oh God, I think the thing with Vern Troyer, and it's not that he was bad in the film. I think it's because we've seen the shtick before. You know, some of the jokes, there was like, even in the dressing room, it's like, okay, were these the leftover jokes from when he was Mini-Me on Austin Powers? I mean, really the only difference was that Vern Troyer got to actually scream back at him this time. It felt old shtick, which may not be a bad thing if you're a Mike Myers fan, but if you're looking to a new character, you don't want to get the same Austin Powers jokes.
I don't know why I laughed at this, but one of the few times I laughed in the last couple of days watching this was the scene where they're trying to stall. When Kay Bullard, Jessica Alba's character, yells at a fan who's taunting her. By the way, did you see who that fan was?
No.
Noog. It was Noog. Formerly from Aftermath.
Okay.
On Sportsnet. Yeah. That Noog was the fan that yelled at her. But after she screams at the guy, the coach is like turned on and tries to hit on her. And the way he did it, I was like, I don't know why I found that funny, but I did. And also he kept all they made basically made a Vern Troyer sized dressing room office with everything to his size. He took the furniture and he kept it.
Yeah, which I think is great. And that scene was a decent visual gag. I'm glad you mentioned Jessica Alba, because I think, I mean, the role is not, it's not a depth role, right? You're looking for someone to be there and, almost play, if Mike Myers is going to be so over the top, you want someone who's more dialed back a bit and just kind of in the pocket as far as that role goes. Jessica Alba did that perfectly. I think she was able to maintain a bit of that anchor for the scene. Because if she was trying to match Mike Myers on the crazy scale, the movie would have been way worse than a 14% tomato meter. I think Jessica Alba anchored her scenes very well, and very much played like the almost the antithesis to Cameron Diaz's owner role from Any Given Sunday. You have two female owners of beleaguered sports franchises. Cameron Diaz takes it to like a very dramatic, high fever pitch type level. Jessica Alba needed to anchor this film, and she did.
Yeah, and I mean, I think if you haven't seen this movie and you say, "Oh, Jessica Alba's in this movie," and she was huge. This is right in her peak, right? Late aughts, if you will. And she played the role as you would expect Jessica Alba to play the role. And that's not a bad thing. It's fine. I will also say that her and Guru Pitka hooking up at any point in this movie was so not believable and awkward. But maybe that's part of the joke, but I don't know.
It is quite possible. And yes, you're right. It is kind of, almost like that peak Jessica Alba that time, because this is, of course, 1 year after Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. Now, Fantastic Four fans, don't start throwing things at your headphones, because I said 2008 may have been peak Jessica Alba, and people are sitting there saying, well, what about Idle Hands? And what about Dark Angel? And no. But we're talking like, headlining films type Jessica Alba. And yeah, the Fantastic Four, say what you will about those movies, it's still much better than the Josh Trank 2015 train wreck. And it was also 2 years before Machete, and Machete was freaking awesome. I don't care what anyone says. Machete ruled. But yeah, Jessica Alba was good in this. It was fun, and she had fun with it. And it's hard though. Like I know when we were talking about this back and forth before recording, and it's almost like we kind of need, like, each other on suicide watch as we were watching this film because it was that bad. It's hard to sit there and point at Mike Myers. I mean,
and if you know, and the thing with Mike Myers is, in the years that follow this, like, he kind of went to the background a bit, right? Like, we haven't, in the last decade, we haven't seen a whole lot from him. Although I did think he was fantastic in Bohemian Rhapsody as the, what was he, the record label executive? And
yes,
I think
absolutely.
He had a little mini role in there, and I don't know if this is the start of the downturn. And the one thing about Mike Myers that you can say, with all respect to what he did, Shrek 3 and 4 they weren't as good as the first two, in that recycled jokes, and it just wasn't as good. It was almost like you felt like the franchise went on too long. I think you can say the same thing about Goldmember. Not nearly as good as the first two. It kind of wrapped a bow around the franchise, but it was not nearly as good as the first two. Unrelated, there was talk of an Austin Powers 4. Not sure about that now, but apparently a Shrek 5 is in development. For whatever reason. And
there were actual, little bit roles here and there where, like you mentioned, the Bohemian Rhapsody, where it's a very underrated, kind of under the radar, not a cameo per se, but more of a bit role. He did the same thing the following year after The Love Guru with Inglourious Bastards. And when you see him in that, you go, oh, they did that with Mike Myers. Like, there is stuff out there for him. Right. But you're right. Love Guru, as far as Mike Myers, kind of leading the charge on a production, Love Guru was very much, I think, the last one for film. Yep.
And I think also, like, going to the recycled jokes, if you will, I felt like a lot of the jokes in Love Guru, some of his shtick that we'd already seen from him, the one that comes to mind is that magic carpet that clearly had like a remote, like the magic carpet he would sort of, or the cushion he would ride around.
Which I want one of those now.
I know, yeah, I know, but it felt like recycled shtick from some of the other movies he's done, and I felt like every joke went on for an extra minute too long because he felt like he had to explain it to people, as if he knew we weren't going to laugh at it. So no, I'm talking about my penis. It's funny, right? Yeah.
No. If you have to explain the joke is not funny, but. Yeah. Let's talk about some of the gags that worked, as far as the script wise goes, because as a whole, The Love Guru script wise is not the best movie. And that's putting it mildly, but there were some gags in here that I think really worked very well and didn't need to be over explained. The Morgan Freeman voiceover machine. I want one.
Another random cameo. Yeah.
Yeah, well, exactly. Aside, you don't even see him, but I think the Morgan Freeman voiceover machine not only makes fun of the fact that Morgan Freeman is your voiceover for life, it makes good use of that voice and kind of points fun to it. The fact that Bohemian Rhapsody was a track on the radio when they were flipping.
A 2-second nod to Wayne's World. Oh, speaking of nods to Wayne's World. So in the Wayne's World movies, the guy with the long hair that would count 4, 3.
Yep.
I think so. There's a couple of scenes where they have like a roadie with long hair doing things. I think it's that same guy.
I'd have to double check. I would have to double check.
He looked like it could be.
Now I'm going to throw this one to you to see what you thought of this, because I thought it was funny. Knowing the history behind the joke is the entire, the fact that the Leafs are in the situation that they're in, and it's not the fact that Darren Roanoke lost his girl and his mojo, but it's the Bullard curse. Yes. Toronto Maple Leafs fans are probably going to feel this one a little bit harder because of one Harold Ballard. Now, if you're listening to this podcast and you've watched this movie, I'm sorry, but the movie, not the podcast. But if you don't follow hockey and you don't know the Leafs, Simon, what is the Harold Ballard quote unquote curse?
Pure reference to Harold Ballard, who was the Leafs owner. And I'm a little younger. I was a little murky on how he became sole earner because it was him and Conn Smythe for a while. But under Harold Ballard, especially in the 70s and 80s, the Leafs were a joke. I'm trying to think of sports teams now that are sideshows. as we record this, the Buffalo Sabres have just taken away Jack Eichel's captaincy, and they're having a big fight over whether he should have neck surgery. Off-ice distractions. Things like they fired Roger Nielsen, one of the best coaches of all time, the inventor of the first coach to use video of old games to research teams. They fired him. They never replaced him. They brought him back with a paper bag on his head. Mm-hmm. The way they handled the departures of guys like Darryl Sittler, who they basically ripped the C off his friend. Like Darryl Sittler, one of the great Leafs of all time. The 80s were bad. The Leafs they just were bad. And, you know, I think all Harold Ballard cared about was money, and he got a little crotchety and old. He passed away in 1990, and I think there were a lot of people, I hate to say it this way, they were happy he died. But it was, you know, the passing of Harold Ballard was believed to bring an end to that curse. Now, that was 31 years ago. The Leafs have not won a Stanley Cup since 1967, but their fortunes did turn to the point, like they had a renaissance in the early 90s. They had some good runs in the playoffs in the Matt Sundin era, long past the death of Harold Ballard. And it's one of those things where now we're just waiting for them to get over the hump of the current team they have. But yeah, with Harold Ballard around, they're a bit of a sideshow and not well run as an organization. And that all goes down to that one man.
I mean, let's be honest, you know, this movie is a Maple Leafs love letter by Mike Myers. And you can kind of almost accept that and smile a little bit about it. So a gag like the Ballard curse, two Leaf fans who are probably, you know, make up the majority of the box office of this film, you know, did that play well, you know, for you as a Leaf fan watching this?
I know about the Ballard shtick. Also, Vern Troyer dressed as like basically with a Punch Imlach gimmick with the hat and everything. Punch Imlach was the coach of the last Leafs team to win the Cup in '67 in the Hall of Fame. But, you know, I think just generally we all knew that this was going to be a love letter to the Maple Leafs, and they shot most of everything at what was then Air Canada Centre, now Scotiabank Arena, although there are some interesting location fallacies that I don't know if you would have caught. We can get into that. There are some... It's disappointing that the movie is just generally bad because it's a love letter to the Maple Leafs by Mike Myers, but also there are some inconsistencies in the way they address the actual hockey that were absolutely glaring. And given that Mike Myers was, you know, a hockey fan, was doing this movie, I'm surprised they did that. It almost seems like they couldn't think of another way to get out of certain angles, and these were shortcuts.
They painted themselves in a corner. Yeah,
they did.
Yeah, hockey fans. I mean, let's be honest, right? This isn't Youngblood. This isn't Mystery Alaska. This isn't Miracle. If you're going to this movie, this isn't even the Mighty Ducks, right? If you're going to this movie for hockey accurate references, you bought the wrong movie ticket. Okay.
The accuracy is the Maple Leafs. They got the branding. The LA Kings. So they're playing the LA Kings in the Stanley Cup final. And they had the actual branding. We want to get into the hockey mistakes. There's a few. I mean,
they had Rob Blake taking a face-off.
Rod Blake was a defenseman. Hall of Famer. Like, Rod Blake was a defenseman. You defensemen do not take the center ice face-off. That was one. Two, Roanoke got into a fight on the ice. They had a bench-clearing brawl. By the way, why do all hockey movies have to have a bench-clearing brawl?
All-time hockey.
They haven't actually happened in 40 years. Just saying. But, right? But they always have one. Fine, but the referee suspends him for one game, and then he punches someone else, suspends him for 2 games. You don't do that. Nope. The suspensions come after you kick him out. The suspensions come after the fact. So that was that. Also, the very end of the movie, I don't know if we want to get into spoilers, but...
it was a 2008 film. If you haven't seen this movie by now, A, you're a smart person. B, you go watch the movie.
By the way, it's free on Prime. So, just so you know. No money was spent in watching this again. So at the very end, so Roanoke gets his mojo back. He ties the game, and I really like the sequence. He did like a cross-style goal, and he tied the game with 8 seconds to go. And then all of a sudden, he has the puck again and gets knocked down. You can't just suddenly have the puck again with 8 seconds to go. You would have to do the face off at center ice, and then get the puck, and then get through. And that's almost impossible in 8 seconds. He just suddenly had the puck again. And that's just lazy writing, man. Like, I saw that one. I saw right through.
I have a conspiracy theory, though. I have a conspiracy theory about Rob Blake taking a face-off. Is that whoever came up with the idea of Rob Blake taking a face-off in the script was the same person who let Ray Bourque take the penalty shot at the 1998 Winter Olympics over Wayne Gretzky.
Interesting.
That's my theory.
I mean, the other thing is of actual players outside of Roanoke, Rod Blake was the only one that said anything, and outside of obviously Lecoq. But maybe they just felt the need to put him in center ice so he had that role, because you can't really yell it from the blue line. Although there was one hockey player cameo I saw that you have to watch in freeze frame. The scene early in the movie where he gets glass pushed against the boards. Pause it. On the right, it's Bob Probert.
Really?
Yeah. You have to watch it in freeze frame, but it's Bob Probert.
That's almost like the nod of approval for a good hit into the boards.
Yeah. Because I was trying to look, because there were obviously some other NHL players on the ice, but I didn't recognize anybody. They didn't have any of the real Kings players' names apart from Blake. So, I would have thought it would have been more NHL players on the ice in disguise, but Probert was the only one I recognized, and that was from that 1 2-second clip.
I think as a whole, when it comes to the script and the plot, putting all your plot inconsistencies and plot holes aside, I think the character of the Love Guru actually does work as a short SNL sketch. And I say that because of the presentations in the book titles, right? Some of the book titles that were coming out, and I mentioned one kind of off the top, does it hurt when you do that? Don't do that. I could easily see, okay, if anyone at Saturday Night Live is listening right now, they need to fill 5 minutes. Call up Mike Myers. I don't think he's doing much. And tell him to bring the Love Guru back on. Just do a 5-minute presentation by the Guru Pitka of his new book. As a sketch, this character works. And I think the movie might have been better received had Mike Myers been doing the Love Guru as a character on Saturday Night Live beforehand. That's why Wayne's World worked, I think. I mean, aside from the fact that Wayne's World as a movie is still a much better movie, we got to know Wayne and Garth. We got to love Wayne and Garth in short 3 to 5 minute bites that we were hyped for 90 minutes of Wayne and Garth. And sometimes a Saturday Night Live sketch works as a movie. Wayne's World is that. Sometimes it doesn't. Think of The Ladies' Man. But I think The Ladies' Man, I'm sure will come back to haunt me.
There's been some bad ones like Coneheads.
I loved Coneheads. Coneheads was great. But it's true. Some SNL sketches work well as a movie. I would be curious if we could, take Doctor Strange's Time Stone, go back in time, convince Mike Myers to do the Love Guru as an SNL sketch, develop the character, flush out the character, make him familiar to the viewing audience, and then people are hyped to see this character that we know, then we love, then we're ready for 90 minutes with backstory and the world of Guru Pitka, not just cram it down our throats right off the bat.
Well, and also, Wayne's World didn't really require much selling because we knew the characters, and the trailers, I think, got us more excited. Love Guru, people didn't like the trailers. Like, the trailers were terrible. Like, I don't know about this.
What?
I was looking forward to this Leaf movie, and this is not what. I will ask you, because I've been trying to kind of debate this too. How offensive is this movie to certain cultures? Now, one way it was described, and there's a whole backstory behind this. I got to find it, but a Hindu activists, the Hindu American Foundation, when they saw the trailers, asked to see a screening. Well, they ended up getting invited to a screening literally last minute, like a pre-screening in Minneapolis. So they had to make it out there the night before release. Now, in the end, the reviewers said it was vulgar and crude, but not necessarily anti-Hindu. I would also, as someone who's not as familiar with Hindu traditions as others, I don't know, but it's also, I don't think you can make this movie now.
You know what? I'm of two minds, and I think I fully agree with the idea that the movie is crass and vulgar, but not really offensive, because it is so over the top. Because it is a completely overblown caricature of everything that kind of Hinduism is. It never disses Hinduism. It never misportrays it. I think the fact that, and you mentioned cameos earlier, I think the fact that Deepak Chopra was, because it wasn't necessarily,
he was in the movie and he actually publicly came out in support of the movie to kind of quell this uprising a little bit.
I think Hinduism aside, it was very much just someone who wanted to be as famous as his own idol, and that's kind of at the heart of the film. As far as the Guru Pitka character. And if you're looking at, can this movie be made today? I think it still can. I think it still can because it's so over the top. People aren't looking to a Mike Myers comedic character as social commentary on foreign religions. You know,
fair enough.
It's very much like Dogma, the Kevin Smith movie, right? Hardcore Christianity was so against this film, but if you go and watch this movie, you have, Linda Fiorentino, freaking Jay and Silent Bob, and Chris Rock fighting a giant rubber poop monster. Like, let's take the whole thing in. I think Dogma, as a for lack of a better term, an affront to any kind of religion, is a harder sell today of can this movie be made than The Love Guru. But I think still both can be made because it's so over the top, because it's so blown way out of proportion. I'm
going to go further back, Monty Python, The Life of Brian.
Oh, absolutely.
Which, if you listen to what they talk about, I mean, there are a few things, and I've always been a big Python fan, but I fully know there are some things they did that would totally cross the line now. But they never made fun of Christ itself. They made fun of the things around religion that were ridiculous. I mean, the end of the movie with a bunch of guys on crucifixes, you couldn't do that now. But
no.
But turning it back to Love Guru, I like what I found. This firstpost.com wrote about it last year, and this is what they took away. Granted, the movie is offensive to a lot of different kinds of people, but it's stupidly offensive, which makes it very exhausting to watch. The movie is obviously poking fun at the business of being a guru.
Yep.
I mean, on the whole side, we haven't talked about this, but the whole thing is if he fixes the marriage, Roanoke and his lady, he was going to end up on Oprah. That was his whole motivation for doing this, being better than Deepak. So, I mean, there's that whole side angle to it too, which never really got flushed out properly. There's a lot of things that get flushed out, but that was one of them.
Right. Although I will give full credit to the fact that, Oprah actually agreed to them using her likeness in the film. So did Celine Dion. But
apparently the video they had didn't work, so they had to do a massive wide shot where it's just a little speck in the room that's clearly not her singing.
Yes, but the fact that she still approved of it, I think, is again, one of those things where say what you will about the music, right? But the characterization of her in the film, which is the Justin Timberlake Celine Dion serenade scene, as a Canadian. As a Canadian music fan, you just sit there and go, "Oh my God, he nailed it! He absolutely nailed it."
I would like to show you my love for you by making the Quebec pizza.
That's the Pop-Tart with the ketchup. Also, to our viewers, the whole Pop-Tart with ketchup on it. Don't try this at home. That is not the Quebec pizza.
Don't do that. No, don't do that.
No, and no. Just no. The cameos. We mentioned
there were a lot of them.
You mentioned some of the more subtle ones. The Kanye West cameo.
There's a backstory to that too.
Oh, absolutely.
That most people won't know now.
Yeah.
You want to get into it? Like,
so during the
George
hurricane,
Bush doesn't like white people.
Exactly. So post Hurricane Katrina, there was a telethon. And, all these actors and musicians came together to come on TV and get people to donate money to help the Katrina recovery efforts in New Orleans. And, they put Mike Myers and Kanye West together in a shot. And Mike Myers reads the script that's in front of him. And then Kanye West just blurts out with George Bush hates black people. And the look on Mike Myers' face, oh dear God, I felt so bad for him. But the fact that, Kanye West is in, apparently there was a scene shot where the two of them are being interviewed. And they asked Kanye West a question in the scene, and Mike Myers just looks and goes, "Don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say it." And I'm kind of glad that scene got cut, because I think the scene is just funnier as a one shot.
Yeah. There's also the how they greet each other. Mariska Hargitay.
Mariska Hargitay.
Dumb. That was unfunny, and then she's in it, but her cameo is like 20 minutes in. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're gonna do this the whole movie, you save that to the end.
I want to point out, and yes, the timing of her being in it, I think, needed to be at the end. We put it out on the Twitter as to what other people who saw this movie and liked it have to say. The Great Song Podcast chimed in, 2 words, Mariska Hargitay. And Justin Fortune, Mariska Hargitay. I believe this whole movie was made just to pull off this joke, and I am okay with that. As a gag, I think, yes, if Mariska Hargitay appeared at the end, almost as if like there was a red carpet thing, and maybe that's where they put, the Jessica Simpson and the Val Kilmer and Mariska Hargitay. The payoff needed to be more, but I think it's hard to say, because it is a bit of an obscure reference. I think it's one of those things where they wrote it, they laughed about it while they were writing it, and then they wanted to put it in, not realizing that it's one of those jokes that's only funny to them. Well, also, I mean, her show was huge then. This is 2008, right? So, I mean, she's relevant.
Also, I mean, there's Jessica Simpson, Val Kilmer, and they were fine. I thought those were funny.
Mm-hmm. Keeping in mind too, this is 2008, and Jessica Simpson is again peak Jessica Simpson. Like this is
Daisy Dukes. This is Daisy Dukes, Jessica Simpson, right around that time.
And Newlyweds Jessica Simpson, absolutely, yeah. You can't really say much about the set and costume design in this film.
I can say something about the location inconsistency, because I noticed a few things.
All right, let's go for that.
One, so obviously most of the hockey scenes were shot at what is now Scotiabank Arena, was then Air Canada Centre. I think they actually shot scenes in the legitimate Leafs dressing room, or they built a very close facsimile. But I don't know the answer to that, but it looked pretty accurate. However, there's a scene. The scene where Bullard, Jessica Alba, yells at Guru Pitka, it looks like a press box. It is clearly Rogers Centre.
Really?
It says, it's still in Toronto, but if you look behind where you see the seats, they're all blue, which is not Scotiabank. That's Rogers Centre, formerly Skydome. And then the one scene where the elephant gets walked in through the concourse, that is also Rogers Centre. Now, that's me knowing the locations probably. The other one I had a problem with was when they're in Niagara Falls, and there is no one there. You really couldn't do any extras, like get the scene. There's no one, like they have the whole of the area of Niagara Falls to themselves. That is impossible. It doesn't matter what time of day, like just put some extras in to make it more convincing. Those are the two location faux pas I had issues with. It was nice to see. I think most of the movie was shot in Toronto. I think there was some Oshawa as well, and Casa Loma.
I was about to say, it was cool to see, for anyone who hasn't been to Toronto, Casa Loma is definitely one of the places you want to go see. And the fact that Casa Loma played as, Guru Pitka's, Toronto location, I think was perfect.
There's one other cameo we forgot about.
Oh,
the one that you have to look really closely. So the scene at the airport where he finally tells Dick Pants to screw off and he goes back to the rink when he realizes that Roanoke's got the shakes again.
Mm-hmm.
The Cinnabon cashier is Samantha Bee. You
what?
have to look yeah. She's in the credits, but I was like, really? I had to go back and look. She doesn't say a word. I don't even think you see her on camera, but there she is in the background as the Cinnabon cashier.
Let's talk about the directing a little bit. You did mention the one comment that Mike Myers needed someone to rein him in. Let's kind of put that aside. A lot of the one shot visual gags in this did work. Again, like the Morgan Freeman voiceover machine, that worked. The one shot Kanye West cameo, that worked. So I think given those smaller dose quick laughs, the director handled this actually quite well.
I did like how they handled the scene, whether it's offensive or not, where they're in the coach's office and it's clearly his size and they all kind of squished in, but it looked pretty realistic. I was like, okay, that was well put together. That's more of a designer thing, but that was cool. I mean, I would say the hockey choreography was pretty good because I was trying to figure out if Romani Malco was a good skater. Because sometimes sometimes when you're doing movies about sports, you can hide it. I'm going back to Major League again. Charlie Sheen legitimately had a good fastball. Kevin Costner, pretty good athlete when he was an actual athlete when he was younger. And he didn't have he didn't have to hide anything. I was trying to figure out if Roanoke could actually skate, and at times it looked like he couldn't, but it's hard to tell. Mm-hmm. But he hit that well.
But as far as the visual gags go, there's two instances that I'm thinking of. One worked, and one was, I think, a missed opportunity. When Guru Pitka first meets Jessica Alba's character, and like the third eye opens, and all of a sudden they're in a Bollywood movie.
Oh yeah.
I think that was perfectly shot and directed. I mean, the fact the entire Bollywood scene, there's a quote from a documentary. The movie is called Global Metal, and it's done by the same guys who did Metal: A Headbanger's Journey, the guys at Banger Films. And they're in India and they're interviewing this metal band, and they're describing what Bollywood is. And I'm probably going to paraphrase the quote. He said, Bollywood is a bunch of really bad songs sung with a lot of dancing in front of a lot of trees. And that scene couldn't have been more perfectly scripted Bollywood style, even with the bad film hits on the style of the way it was edited and whatnot. I think that was a really, really well done. The missed opportunity is when Jessica Alba arrives at Casa Loma, and they're playing Extremes More Than Words.
Yeah.
And shot wise, you could see what they were trying to do, right? They were trying to mimic the music video of More Than Words because it's shot very much like that. The only thing I wish they did, just to sell the gag a bit more, is if she walks in and it pans over to the two of them playing, the guitar and the sitar, and it starts to push in, but then it goes black and white. If it went black and white, you nail the visual gag. But maybe that's just me being too much of a music geek to want that to go full on rather than just the subtlety that it was.
The music wasn't bad. What did you think of him covering? Like, they basically Bollywooded some typical North American songs like 9 to 5 and The Joker.
I would like to personally apologize to the Steve Miller Band and Dolly Parton on behalf of this movie, because I'm sure they haven't apologized yet. Those were, as a music fan, those were dreadful. The More Than Words one wasn't that bad. I think that one I could handle that one. But I mean, the Joker and 9 to 5 are, legendary, iconic songs, regardless of what you like his music style. And these were butchered. And I think they went to that gag too much.
It also doesn't help that clearly Mike Myers is not a great singer.
No.
I don't know if they didn't hide that enough.
I'm fine.
I'm not a good singer either. I can't criticize, but
Yeah. Although, as far as music choice goes on the soundtrack, since we're talking music, the elephant porno scene, there is no better song for that scene than Baby Did a Bad, Bad Thing. I have to ask, you were there when they were filming.
They did not do the elephant scene.
They did not do the elephant scenes.
No.
Okay. So,
Imagine if I brought my kid to that game and I'm trying to explain what they're doing. They're playing leapfrog, son.
They're not very good at leapfrog, are they?
No. The guy on the top's tired. He's having a rest.
Oh,
speaking of directing, how do you direct two elephants humping on ice?
How do you approach that scene? You sit there, look at the script, and go, "Oh, we're doing this today." Now that being said, I mean, who knows if, I don't know if they actually had two elephants and trained them to make it look like that, or if they just went CGI. Hard to say. It was one of those moments where it's like, it was funny for a second, and then the joke went on and on and on.
It's like everything else in this movie.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, give those elephants a cigarette afterwards.
He had accomplished the goal of distracting Roanoke so he could score the Stanley Cup winner. Yeah,
it's almost like you need that for like maybe a minute less of the scene, and then like sell the distraction a bit earlier. I do have to say though, speaking of things that were horrifying and I need therapy afterwards.
Oh, I think I know what's coming.
The flashback to young Guru Pitka with Mike Myers' head on it. That was just horrifying.
I actually commented when I was taking notes. I thought that was actually really good CGI for 2008. I was like, I thought you were going to talk about the flashback where they're playing the game with the mops and the pee.
Stick mop.
Yeah, stick mop, which was disgusting. I was like,
no. I mean, there is that trope, right? And you can go back to, my first thought is like any G.I. Joe movie where they show like, young Snake Eyes and young Storm Shadow. And of course they just hire kids that, that look like they would be young Snake Eyes and young Storm Shadow. As a gag, it was funny. And yeah, the CGI was actually well done, but horrifying all the same. Like, this is the stuff that nightmares are made of, like giant Mike Myers head on a tiny body running around. No one needs to see that.
My parents died. I'm in an orphanage. My parents. This weird high voice.
Funny, yes. Horrifying, yes. I do need help after watching that one. But there wasn't much. I mean, the third eye was a little weird, because especially when the camera would move fairly fast and you could see the third eye kind of move around on the forehead. I mean, again, a decent funny gag. Although I did like the part where he puts his thumb on Roanoke's third eye just to get him to stand still. Like, I think I tweaked a little. You might want to check your shorts. Like, okay.
Also, the big resolution with his mother took literally 20 seconds. He comes out of the bathroom. He says, I'm an adult now. Okay, I love you. All right, off to the ice now. Like, that was it. Like, they led up to this big confrontation, and it was 20 seconds. That was it. I'm like, what?
Yeah, well, that's screen time, right? It's, I think at that point though, the joke had run its course. I was almost kind of fine with that, right? It just needed, Darren just needed to stand up to his mom, and that was fine. We'll see what happens after the game, but they just want to stay in the cup, so we're good.
We haven't talked about the dinner he had after the More Than Words song, the balls in a pita, whatever they made.
Oh, that
you like your balls crushed. Do I look like a child? Of course I like curlies in my nuts. At this point, my kids are like, what are you talking about, Dad? Go to bed, son.
Yeah. No, this is not the movie we are watching with our children for fear that they will see us laughing and wonder is Dad okay? Dad's laughing at some stuff that's really not funny. Is Dad going to be okay?
It's like watching Night Court when I'm 10 as opposed and my parents laughing at the jokes, and Night Court when I'm a teenager and laughing at everything. By the way, Night Court's coming back. Reboot with John Larroquette.
I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want the magic of Night Court was the combination of John Larroquette and Richard Mole and Harry Anderson and Marky Post and oh God,
rest in peace, Marky Post and Charles Robertson, by the way,
and Harry Anderson.
Yeah,
yeah, like I think John Larroquette may be one of the only ones left. I think I can't remember her name right now. The girl who played Roz.
Marsha Warfield. She's still around.
Yes.
And Bull's still around.
Okay, if Marsha Warfield is the judge, or if John Larroquette's on the bench and she's the lawyer, or at least one of the lawyers, like if she takes the Marky Post role, okay, maybe. But I don't know. Like Night Court was one of my favorite sitcoms of that day and age. I don't know if I want to go back to that. And
you can't stream it. Like it's not available anywhere.
Like
probably because it's really too offensive for now. But there are some things you couldn't do. But
I also don't want Guru Pitka to be the judge in the new Night Court. That is not happening. Not happening at all. I'll take Guru Pitka appearing on Saturday Night Live. But that's kind of where I draw the line. Before we get to the MVP though, of the film, I do want to point out Movie Date Night on Twitter also chimed in about this film, said, while Mike Myers had found his rhythm in the James Bond satire with Austin Powers, this was an attempt to branch out his character work and satire, a different subculture of holistic meditation. While the subject matter may not be the funniest, the character is certainly amusing. Fair, do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, it's fair.
Again, I think the Guru Pitka could be funny in smaller doses in a much smaller scale. I think Guru Pitka should be on Saturday Night Live. I think Guru Pitka as not necessarily a regular character, but every now and then if you've got the right guest host on Saturday Night Live that needs a moment with Guru Pitka to set things straight, right? Yeah. I'm fine with that, right? That
you kind of do a twist on the SNL. What was it? I'm good enough. I'm smart enough.
Positive affirmations with Stuart Smalley.
You'd probably like have that same kind of angle with Guru Pitka.
Speaking of Saturday Night Live sketches turned movies that didn't work all that well.
I forgot they made one. I forgot about that one.
I know Guru Pitka on Saturday Night Live. I'm fine with. I'd even be fine with like. Do you remember Quibi? That streaming service of like things that only last like 15 minutes. If Guru Pitka had a Quibi show when Quibi was around, I think that would have been fine.
That was one of those things that failed really quickly.
That was a fun 5 months.
And then launched around the same time as COVID. It was perfect. And then nope, we're shutting it down.
Mm-hmm. It's come to time. Simon Bennett, who is your MVP of the Love Guru?
Jacques Lecoq Grande, the only really funny character throughout the movie at all is Justin Timberlake. He saves this movie from being a less than 10% movie on Rotten Tomatoes. Justin Timberlake, long before he was the voice in Trolls, is my MVP.
Okay, so for my MVP, I had to give honorable mention to Stephen Colbert. Because again, the tradition of the completely out there play-by-play announcer lives on lovingly in Stephen Colbert.
By the way, in the powder blue hockey night jackets, both of them.
Again,
very nice.
A very much a love story for Leaf fans, for hockey fans in general. And I have no problem with Mike Myers writing a love story based on that. But I have to agree with you. This may be the only time I've ever fully outright agree with you. Yes, Justin Timberlake is my MVP for the Love Guru. And thank God, because this movie came out in 2008. And in 2006, he was in a movie called Southland Tales with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And it was all kinds of weird. And I'm not quite sure still if I like that movie or not. It was kind of out there. Like if you ever watch it, it's a weird trip. It's a very weird trip. And I think also that same year he put out Black Snake Moan with Samuel Jackson and Christina Ricci. Again, a very odd film. So I like you said, I wanted Timberlake to be fun because he does have that character. He does have that, that persona of someone who gets it, who has fun with it. And this was him embracing all the fun silliness and just enjoying the moment. And it showed in the character. And Jacques Lecoq can go down as one of the funniest hockey players on film.
It was fantastic. He played. And I don't know if he watched any other hockey movies to get inspired, like maybe Slapshot with a French Canadian goalie in that movie. But no, he was, and it was almost like they actually reined in his jokes. They didn't go too long. But yes, Justin Timberlake saved that movie from being a total abomination as opposed to being a partial one.
I think I made my bold statement though for the show. Jacques Lecoq being one of the funniest hockey player characters in cinematic history. That's my bold statement for the film. Go ahead and at me, listeners of the podcast. If you want to hop on Twitter and find us at Not That Badcast, I'm curious now. Who do you think is the funniest hockey player fictional character in film? Hit me up, Not That Badcast. I want to know, because the next time Simon Bennett comes on the show, by the way, open invitation anytime you want to come on the show, man, and watch horrible movies with me. We'll list the characters. We'll list anyone that Twitter had put out there as funniest hockey characters on film. Simon, thank you so much for going down this horrible road with me. Where can listeners of this podcast hear you on the Toronto airwaves?
All right, you can hear me on 680 News, which will soon be City News 680 as of October 18th, depending on when this podcast drops. Either way, you'll hear me on 680 on the dial, Sportsnet 590 The Fan a little bit as well. Shout out to my friends in Kitchener, Ottawa, and Halifax. You'll hear me out there as well. And also coming soon, the Toronto Marlies season. Looking forward to going back season 14 for me as PA announcer there with actual fans, we hope. So this COVID thing hopefully will be in the rear view mirror. Shout me out, Twitter, Sports Voice Guy. I'd love to hear from you.
We have hit our last minute of play. Simon, thank you so much for this. To all of our listeners, thank you for listening to this episode of It's Not That Bad. The podcast looks for A grades in B movies. Now, look, if you want to join in on the fun, hit me up at Not That Badcast. If you can think of a movie that you think is unfairly maligned, or you think is just bad enough that there's no way in hell that we can find anything good in the movie, let me know on Twitter. We'll watch it, we'll dissect it, and we'll probably hate ourselves afterwards, but that's okay. This has been It's Not That Bad, the podcast. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you next time. Take care.
Hey folks, Stefan Shirazi and Renee Richardson here from the Metallica Report.
And we are proud members of the Pantheon podcast family, where the best of music and podcasts unite.
We've got something pretty cool for you. We're giving away an exclusive Metallica merch package worth over $250.
That's a whole lot of Scary Guys, Skulls, M72, and other sought-after Metallica swag. And we've made it easy for you to win. Follow and share the Metallica Report, and you're in the game. Go to pantheonpodcast.com/Metallica, enter your email, and hit that button to be entered to win.
And just like that, you're eligible for our monthly exclusive Metallica merch package.
And guess what, rockers? You can enter every month, so just do it. And while we love our global brothers and sisters, the lawyers won't let us ship outside the U.S.